I say the extremes, while many countries haven't even started vaccinating, and another country has already vaccinated majority of its population, the 2 doses, and now moving to a third dose, which is the booster. It's really not only disappointing, it's seriously disappointing. So what WHO is asking is for enlightened self-interest through sharing or through having vaccines throughout the world. The advantage is the pandemic will stop.
That was WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus slamming nations who are already using booster doses, even as poorer countries continue to struggle with their vaccine supply.
Over here, the health department is still cautioning against the use of boosters, as well as the mixing and matching of vaccines. This comes after San Juan lawmaker Ronnie Zamora admitted to receiving 4 doses or 2 different sets of vaccine brands. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching the big story. Let's start with the World Health Organization warning against mixing and matching of vaccines. They're calling it a chaotic situation.
The WHO cited the need for further studies, though a local official has already barred receiving 2 pairs of different vaccine brands. Greg Gregorio with that big story.
San Juan Representative Ronaldo Zamora himself admitted to receiving 4 COVID-19 vaccines. His first 2 doses are of Sinopharm's, followed by a Pfizer jab 6 months after.
I have been vaccinated twice over. Apat.
But the Food and Drug Administration is holding back from calling his succeeding vaccines as booster shots. After all, there's still a question on the authenticity of the Sinopharm jabs used on the lawmaker.
Ang ini-investigate natin dito yung mga possible smuggler or distributor at saka distributor nitong mga vaccine, ng mga unregistered vaccine or counterfeit vaccine. No? Hindi naman yung mga victim o yung mga napapayag nilang magpa-injection sa kanila at nasingil nila. No? And these are criminally liable yan, ang pagbibenta sa atin ng unregistered drug.
For the health department, the mixing and matching of vaccines and the use of booster shots is still a no-no.
Although naririnig-rinig na natin sa buong mundo na nagbo-booster sila. Ngayon yung mga special conditions, we will have to really study it kung ano yung mga side effects. They are answerable, but ayaw nating maging norm yan hanggat hindi pa napapatunayan.
Israel has become the first country in the world to offer a vaccine booster shot. They're using a 3rd dose of Pfizer's vaccine for the immunocompromised among its largely vaccinated population. Pfizer and Moderna aim to provide booster shots in nations with already high levels of vaccination, something that does not sit well with the World Health Organization.
While many countries haven't even started vaccinating, and another country has already vaccinated majority of its population, the 2 doses, and now moving to a 3rd dose, which is the booster. It's really not only disappointing, it's seriously disappointing.
The WHO has also warned against the mix and match of COVID-19 vaccines.
Limited data on mix and match. There are studies going on. We need to wait for that. It will be a chaotic situation in countries if citizens start, deciding when and who they should be taking a 2nd or a 3rd or a 4th dose.
For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Let's get more insights from Dr. Lulu Bravo. She's Executive Director of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination. Dr. Bravo, welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Robbie, and thank you very much for having me tonight.
Ma'am, as you know and as you heard from our earlier stories, other countries, richer countries, have moved on to booster shots. In the meantime, many countries, poorer countries, are still waiting to even get started or gain some momentum in their vaccination efforts. We are on that side of the fence as well. Other than expressing disappointment. As the WHO has said, what can we do? Or are we really just at the mercy of nations supplying these vaccines?
Robbie, you know what? We really need to educate. Educate not only our doctors, just like what we have done many, many years, before, but also our public, our layman, even our policy makers. This is very important. And I guess this is where the source of our confusion is all about. Because a lot of people really do not know what to do. And somehow they hear this news, they hear that news, and they think that, yes, this is all right for me. But what they don't know is that you need to be able to get recommendations from our own experts, our own FDA. I heard Dr. Eric Domingo a while ago saying what he needs to say to the public. And I do hope our policymakers especially would listen to the experts. Because it is not recommended. There's no booster yet that is to be recommended. There is no mix and matching that is to be recommended yet. And of course, only those who are allergic and those who had a first dose having anaphylaxis that needs to get a second kind of vaccine. Otherwise, we should not do this.
But there have been reports, of course, I'm sure you've heard of incidences of people taking it on their own, going for a second set of shots. Is it just a question of efficacy, or is it also a question of safety at this point?
Robbie, it is a question of insecurity because they cannot really remember, or this is something that only those who have studied and who have seen the effects of all these vaccines, those are the ones that we have to really consult. Those are the ones whom we need to ask for their recommendations, because we do have clinical trials for 220 years of vaccinology. Remember, 220 years. And the scientists have really gained a lot of knowledge about vaccines and what it can do to your body and what it does years and years and years after you are given a vaccine. And there are more than, right now, 30 vaccines that are now available to prevent diseases that are fatal, that are very severe, very serious. And the 30th vaccine is really the COVID-19. I can tell you, it is a complicated matter. It cannot be just taken in as a social media information. We have to get experts' opinion. We have to get the clinical trial data analysis and see. And besides the clinical trial, of course, you also have to consider vaccine availability and the fact that we do need to listen to WHO. I was really, I would say, disappointed. And what Dr. Tedros said, seriously disappointed with some of our, I would say, of our leaders maybe, when they do something that is against the recommendation of our experts, of our scientists.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was vaccine expert Dr. Lulu Bravo. As talks on booster shots continue, the country's level of vaccination remains low. Tonight's big number, 3.2%. That's the percentage of fully vaccinated Filipinos out of the country's total population of 109 million. That translates to 3.5 million Filipinos. Around 9.66 million, or 8.8% of the population, have received their first dose as of July 11. In total, the country has administered more than 13.1 million COVID-19 vaccines.
These are the other big stories tonight. The country's credit rating is in danger of being downgraded after Fitch Ratings lowered its outlook for the Philippines to negative. Moody's and S&P are expected to follow suit. A June Pulse Asia survey yielded a Duterte-Duterte tandem for the top two posts in next year's Pulse. And satellite images show algae formation in parts of the West Philippine Sea as Chinese vessels anchored in the area allegedly dump sewage and human waste. These big stories after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. Ratings agency Fitch has lowered its outlook on the Philippines to negative, calling out rising government debt and how the lockdowns have hurt the economy. What does this all mean for the country? One News business editor Regina Lay explains.
Fitch Ratings is one of the three big agencies in the world that rates all countries' debt. The first thing to note is that it hasn't downgraded the Philippines' credit rating yet. Our credit rating remains a triple B, which is one notch above minimum investment grade. What Fitch did is lowered our outlook to negative, which means the economy is facing major risks, and so we are under close monitoring. And this is a big deal because it could trigger similar moves by the two other agencies, Moody's and S&P.
Yeah, so I think the two of the big three come and follow with regard to outlook revisions from stable to negative. At the same time, I think that what really needs fixing is our economic engines.
For now, Fitch Ratings will put us under review for roughly 18 to 24 months. If, at the end of it, they do decide to lower the country's credit rating, that would have two serious consequences. First, it will raise the interest rates on loans, both for the government and businesses, which means less money for social welfare programs, as well as economic support like the ayuda from Bayanihan 1 and 2.
As they say in Filipino, nakakain ba yan? Can eat credit ratings, in the sense that it leads to lower borrowing costs, and the savings on that interest, on the interest cost, goes a long way and can be utilized for other more productive.
Second, it will affect the perception of the Philippines as an investment destination, which will be a big problem in the long run. At the moment, both the Finance Department and Bangko Sentral say they're not too worried about this revision. But Fitch says the government's target of herd immunity by year-end is, quote-unquote, ambitious, considering that to date, only about 3% of the population have been fully vaccinated thus far. The Philippines first won investment grade rating not too long ago in 2013. Interestingly enough, that was also given by Fitch. And now, just 8 short years later, Fitch has fired a clear warning shot. Get the economy back on track or else. Regina Lay, One News.
Time for our next look at some of the day's big stories. The COVID Theta variant first detected in the country is no longer a variant of interest. The Philippine Genome Center confirmed Tuesday. The World Health Organization had earlier reclassified it as alert for further monitoring on July 6. The PGC said there have only been sporadic detections of global Theta cases, which are said to be more transmissible and could evade immune response. The Octa Research Group wants to keep Metro Manila under general community quarantine as the classification expires July 16. Octa said Metro Manila is not yet ready for the least restrictive MGCQ due to the threat of the Delta variant. The group urged government to allocate more vaccines in NCR Plus 8 as supply remains low. And ousted PDP Laban Vice Chairman Alfonso Cusi refused to accept his expulsion from the ruling party. He instead urged Party President Senator Manny Pacquiao and Executive Vice Chairman Senator Coco Pimentel to not skip their meeting on Saturday. Energy Secretary Cusi said Pacquiao and Pimentel must present their case after alleging that Cusi and 2 other officials breached the party's constitution.
A Duterte-Duterte tandem is leading the top bets for president and vice president in a recent Pulse Asia survey. 28% of the respondents said they would have voted for Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte if the polls were held in June when the survey was conducted. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno was in second place with 14%, closely followed by former Senator Bongbong Marcos at 13%. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte was the top choice as next vice president with nearly a fifth, or 18% of respondents saying they would have voted for him if elections happened last month. Moreno also came in second in the vice presidential survey with 14%. Senate President Tito Soto tied for fourth with Marcos, with each garnering hypothetical votes of 10%. The Commission on Elections is mulling allowing only one voter at a time inside polling centers due to the pandemic. COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez said it is the most extreme option of the range of possibilities that they're discussing. Though the solo voter would still join 5 polling officers in a room, if ever, the commission is also pushing for a day-long 12-hour voting on May 9, 2022.
And now for the big story in sports. Exactly 10 days to go before the Tokyo Olympics, the country's 3 Olympic golfers are wasting no time to make sure the medals are within reach. A look into their latest preparations in my report. It's crunch time for the country's Olympic golfers. Yuka Saso and Bianca Pagdanganan have been sharpening their irons in the last few tournaments before heading to Tokyo. Just this weekend, the Pinay golfers played at the 2021 LPGA Marathon Classic in Ohio, USA. US Open champion Yuka finished 5th, while Bianca wound up tied for 50th. Bianca admits she needs to improve parts of her game.
If anything, definitely focus more on my putting and short game, just scrambling for pars.
The 23-year-old golfer says her Olympic qualification came as a surprise. After an impressive debut in the women's major, Bianca had set the tour record for the biggest single-week leap, climbing from world number 712 to 234. Her Olympic ranking now stands at number 42.
I didn't think I'd be able to play the Olympics this soon. My first year on tour, I had 2 good tournaments, which bumped up my ranking and then put me in the run for Tokyo. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the run for Tokyo.
Aside from Bianca and Yuka, Pinoy golf star Juvik Pagunsan also has his eyes set on the prize at the Tokyo Olympics. The 43-year-old veteran is coming off a Mizuno Open victory in Japan. The National Golf Association says that while Yuka and Bianca both have their youth as their advantage, Juvik's experience will provide more chances for a podium finish.
In golf, maybe the cliche of age is just a number applies, no? Juvik is a very, very skilled athlete. He's highly skilled and he's way up there. He can easily do PGA Tour. Yung skill level ng tatlong athlete natin are way up there with everyone else in the planet. So doon wala naman tayong worry.
The Olympic golf tournament is scheduled from July 9 to August 7 for the men's division, while the women's tournament is set from August 5 to August 8. Gretchen Hall, We Are One News. Time for another quick break. When we return, the Defense Department called out the use of a wrong photo in a report alleging the dumping of human waste by Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea. And the winless U.S. men's basketball team might learn a thing or two from these female missionaries in Cavite who have some hoop tricks up their sleeves. Their trending video after the break.
Sa buhay, kailangan natin lumakad sa pamamagitan ng pananampalataya. Hindi sa paningin.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. A U.S. firm is claiming that Chinese vessels are dumping waste in the West Philippine Sea based on compiled satellite images over the past 5 years. Agencies will look into the study, but they did note a misleading photo in the report. Camille Samonte with the details.
An accumulation of human waste, sewage, and wastewater. This is the aftermath of hundreds of Chinese vessels anchoring in parts of the West Philippine Sea.
When the ships don't move, the poop piles up. Part of that damage is the sewage that these anchored ships, more than 200 of them, are dumping into that reef water.
These satellite images of the Union Banks from the US-based geospatial firm Simolarity, taken 5 years apart between 2016 and 2021, showed increased chlorophyll and overgrowth of algae, which are very harmful to coral reefs.
The damage to the reefs in just the last 5 years is visible and dramatic. And this time period is after, and therefore in addition to, the well-documented reef destruction from the harvest of giant clams and the artificial island building.
Simolarity founder and CEO Liz Der warned that the coral damage in the Spratlys could lead to a hunger crisis, which may have global repercussions. Many of the inhabitants of the reefs are food for the fish that make up the supply for the nations around the South China Sea, including the Philippines.
This is a catastrophe of epic proportions, and we are close to the point of no return. This needs to stop immediately. China, stop shitting on the Spratlys.
The Environment and Natural Resources said it has now coordinated with concerned authorities to authenticate the report, but Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana was quick to shun the allegations. Lorenzana pointed out that the photo used in the report was taken from a 2014 Daily Mail report on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Still, Marine Conservation Group Oceana challenged the government to hold Chinese vessels accountable.
Kailangan mag-clean up, mag-rehabilitate yung nag-cause ng pollution, ng marine pollution na yun. And so hindi lang siya pa, magkakaroon ng sanctions, whether fine and other appropriate sanctions.
The Chinese embassy in the Philippines has yet to make a comment. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
In world news, a fire that engulfed the COVID-19 isolation ward of a hospital in southern Iraq killed at least 64 people. Local civil defense forces announced that firefighters had brought the fire under control. Further investigation will be made, but the Iraqi Health Ministry said the blaze was caused by the misuse of oxygen cylinders.
It is that time of the year again. The Emmys will be honoring the best in TV. Ahead of the announcement at 11:30 p.m. local time, a lot of fans have already made their forecasts, beginning with Netflix's The Crown, which already got 3 nominations in the past. Feel-good comedy Ted Lasso of Apple TV Plus is also a strong contender, thanks to its star Jason Sudeikis. As for the miniseries category, The Queen's Gambit and its breakout star, Anya Taylor-Joy, are seen to get nods. HBO's horror drama Lovecraft Country is expected to get honors, despite its cancellation after 1 season. Among the sci-fi and fantasy shows in contention are The Mandalorian and WandaVision of Disney+. The Academy's voters are expected to sustain last year's inclusivity in acting nods, which included a record 35 black nominees. Ceremonies will air live on September 10 from a theater with limited in-person audience and guests. Nick Garcia, We Are One News.
Another big story in sports, YouTube star Logan Paul paid a surprise visit to 8th Division World Champion Manny Pacquiao at the Wild Card Boxing Club in Hollywood, California. The boxing icon and the senator shared a photo of them posing with their fists up, even taking a slight jab at Floyd Mayweather. Last month, the 26-year-old Paul fought Mayweather in an 8-round exhibition that went the distance. Pacquiao, meanwhile, is preparing for his upcoming showdown with WBC IBF welterweight champion Errol Spence, which takes place on August 21. The U.S. men's basketball team succumbed to another shocking loss, this time in the hands of Australia. Patty Mills scored 22 points for Australia as they held the U.S. without a field goal for the final 4 minutes en route to a 91-83 victory. The three-time defending Olympic gold medalists have dropped to 0-2 in their 5-game slate of exhibitions leading up to the Tokyo Olympics. Damian Lillard led the U.S. with 22 points, while Kevin Durant scored 17 and Bradley Beal finished with 12.
The U.S. team might learn from these two female missionaries in Cavite, if not in the skills department, well, at least in faith. Sisters Estioco and Soriano of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints used basketball as a metaphor for one's faith. Sister Estioco said that while everybody makes mistakes and miss shots in life, one could still do it right through Jesus. Sister Soriano urged viewers to read the Bible while spinning a ball with her pinky. She said, everything is possible with Christ. Biglang tira ng tres.
Minsan sa buhay, maaari natin maramdaman na napakalain natin sa Diyos. Kay Kristo, lahat ay posible.
Oh, that's an amazing way to spread the word of God. Gives me an idea now for my TikTok.
Sige, panindigan mo. No, but really, anything that spreads the word, the gospel, I mean, they're spreading good news. At saka konti pananampalataya pa, pwede palang gumaling yung tiro
Oo,
sa
diba? Magdasal-dasal tayo para dyan. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.